Hey there, it's Lara here with your Witchy Wednesday weekly astrology forecast. This time for the week of September 25th to October 1st, 2019. Thanks for being here. I really do appreciate it. If you're interested in knowing more about the kind of things that I do, the readings that I do, you can check out my website, and the link to that is always below. So, the focus of our talk today is going to be about the upcoming new moon in Libra, which is happening on September 28th, this coming Saturday, at 5 degrees of Libra, and it will be at about 2:26 p.m. in the afternoon. That's Eastern Standard Time, right? So you can adjust accordingly. There is so much to talk about in relation to this new moon. So much change, so much opportunity on offer at this time. And we're going to get into, the details of all of that. And I'm going to talk about what life area this new moon will be felt for you the most, right? But overall, Libra is the sign of the scales, right? Libra is a cardinal air sign. So it's the energy of initiation, new beginnings. Libra marks the beginning of fall, right? The autumn in the northern hemisphere and the beginning of spring in the southern hemisphere. So there's that energy of, as I said, initiation, new beginnings, coupled with the fact that all new moons, right, when the moon and the sun come together in the sky to birth something new, all new moons essentially are about new beginnings. So there is this real energy here of new beginnings. Libra is an air sign, right? This is a sign that has less to do with our emotions, like the water signs do, and our feelings, and more to do with our thoughts, our ideas, our intellect, communication, that kind of thing. And at the time of this new moon, there's a lot of air in the chart, excuse me, and a lot of earth in the chart as well. Also, reasonable amounts of fire, but water is kind of, it's there, but it's not as influential at the time of this new moon. So in some ways, this is going to be a welcome relief. After that, we're still coming down off that full moon in Pisces that we had a couple of weeks ago, right? And it was a very emotional one. And so we're now, as I'm recording this on the 25th of September, we're in the, approaching the dark moon phase, which is the time just before a new moon is born. And so that is a time where, we may feel a little more like retreating, a little lower on energy, like we may need more rest, more sleep. It's a good time for introspection, for kind of wrapping things up, that sort of thing. And then once we experience this new moon in Libra, we will feel a shift in the energy away from, of course, this always depends on what specifically is going on in your personal birth chart, and I can't know that unless I see it, right? But in general, a shift away from the real feeling all the feels energy of Pisces and into the more kind of cerebral, a bit emotionally, detached, and more social energy of air, right? And we'll talk more about that as we go through here. And because of the fact that there's a lot of earth as well around the time of this new moon, this is a good opportunity for turning our ideas, right, air, into something concrete, earth, reality, making our ideas something real. So, also, because Libra is the energy of balance, it's, this is really something that's emphasized. I talked a little about this in last week's video because of the equinox, right? And I said I would talk more about it this week. Libra is the energy of balance. The symbol of Libra is the scales, right? And so there is this opportunity to rebalance things in our lives wherever they may be out of balance, right? In our personal lives and in the world at large. And as I said to you, there's so many conversations between the planets going on at the time of this new moon that there will undoubtedly be some challenges, but also some opportunities, right? And so, in keeping with that theme of balance, it's like, how do we exist? How do we live with both the good and the bad? How do we balance those two things, right? The yin and the yang, the dark and the light, the the day and the night. That's the equinox, right? How do we take everything that exists in sort of our human experience and somehow try to live with it all, right? Keep it in balance, because there's no escaping sort of one side or the other. And the other thing and I'm going to talk about a specific aspect that made me think of this, but this can be a time of finding sort of unique or liberating solutions to long-standing, issues. And that's because of the influence of Uranus, which I'm going to talk about. But before I get there, a couple of other things I want to say, just in general about where the moon is at. And today, as I'm recording this, the moon is in Leo. It will move into Virgo on Thursday and then into Libra on Saturday, where we'll have that new moon. And it will move on into Scorpio on Monday. So the other thing you may have heard about this new moon is that it is yet another supermoon. What does that mean? It really just means that the moon is very close to the Earth. And so we tend to feel its energies more strongly, more profoundly, right? This new moon will impact all of us in some way, right? There will be this opportunity and potentially some challenges to work through. But in either case, pushing for a new start, new beginning, a new way of doing things, seeing things, in relation to whatever house the new moon is happening for each of us. And but it will impact those folks that have sun, moon, rising, a cluster of planets, important points around the 5-degree Libra mark, very specifically, give or take 10 degrees. But also the other cardinal planets, right? The cardinal signs, rather. The cardinal signs are Libra, Aries, Cancer, and Capricorn. And so those are the signs that mark the beginning of the different seasons. So they are that cardinal energy, that energy of new beginnings and initiation, as I mentioned. So what are some things happening at the time of this new moon? We have Saturn opposite the north node of the moon and conjunct, right? Sitting right on top of, in this case, the south node, because the nodes are always opposite the sky, right? The north node is currently in Cancer, the south node is in Capricorn. So that's happening around at 13 degrees. And this, I'm going to give you kind of a little sound bite. That's a good Libra thing. In terms of each of these conversations and what they can ultimately mean, right? So this Saturn conjunct the south node and opposite the north node is, as I see it, it's a real opportunity here for the release of, the old, past karma, old ways of seeing things, old ways of being, old habits, patterns, structures, hierarchies, the old guard, all of this kind of thing. The patriarchy, Saturn, right? And we ultimately always have the choice, right? We can cling to that, to the past, to the old. We can cling to that South Node, or we can choose to say, okay, these are the lessons we've learned. These are the skills and the experiences that we've had, that we've gathered, um, and become really kind of adept at. But now some of these things are no longer serving, right? And so it's time to move on from here and to let them go, to learn the lessons, take the what's been valuable to us and leave the rest behind and move on, right? Move more towards the North Node. But so we can cling, we can cling to it, as you see some people doing, probably in your own sphere or in your own communities, families, workplaces, organizations, what have you, but also as you see out on the world stage, right? So some people will cling, will choose to cling because they just can't fathom another way. Or it's they're afraid to try something different, or afraid to let that go. They're so attached. Who are they without that, right? Or we can choose to, have some gratitude for those experiences and lessons learned, and then move on from them. The choice is ultimately always ours. But here's the thing. We've got Pluto up there in Capricorn too, right? And as you've heard many, many times, we're moving towards Saturn meeting up with Pluto in Capricorn. And ultimately, Pluto trumps Saturn, to put it really simply. Pluto wants transformation. He will force transformation if we choose not to engage in the process. We can resist it as much as we want. Pluto doesn't really care about that, right? And so ultimately, like I said, it's always our choice. But that's what's going on with Saturn and the South Node and Pluto. Pluto's also involved in a conversation, right? Pluto's at 20 degrees Capricorn. And I'm going to show you all this on the chart in a couple of minutes. But Pluto is at 20 degrees Capricorn, and Venus and Mars are both in Libra. Venus is at 17 degrees Libra. Mars is at 23 degrees Libra at the time of this new moon. And they are going to be in a square, right? So not an exact square. It's a loose square, but it's a square nonetheless, right? And so a square is a conversation of tension where we need to take some action to resolve the tension. And so we act one way or the other, whether it be for our own good or in potentially kind of impulsive ways that maybe aren't so optimal. Or again, the universe kind of forces our hand. And so we've got that going on, but again, that's not the strongest aspect at the time of this, at this new moon. The other thing we have going on is Chiron in Aries. And Chiron in Aries is opposing the new moon, and that's within like 2 degrees, because Chiron is at about 3 degrees Aries, and then the new moon is at 5 of Libra, opposite the chart, right? So opposite the sky. And so Chiron, you've heard me go on about before, and I actually have 2 separate videos on Chiron on my channel under special astrology videos, I think the title is, of the folder. You can check them out there. But Chiron in Aries opposing the new moon it's about healing relationships, about healing our sense of self-worth, about healing our values, what we value. It can be about healing and beauty on some level. And healing our relationship to who we love, healing our relationships, in a sense, right? And that can include all kinds of relationships, including the relationship to ourself. And Aries, Chiron in Aries is very much about, over these next, well, it's about 7 years now that Chiron will still be in Aries, is very much about healing our identity, right? So we have an opportunity for that at the time of this full moon, to take a look at that and to do some work there. Then we have, what else do we have? There's a couple things here I'm going to leave for last. We've got Lilith. So asteroid or dark moon Lilith, she is conjuncting Neptune at the time of this full moon, sitting right on top of Neptune there at 16 degrees Pisces. And there's another asteroid that shares similar qualities to Lilith, and that's Eris. You've heard me mention Eris before, right? So these two asteroids are related to what we would think of as the dark feminine. That does not mean bad. Just dark does not necessarily mean bad, right? Again, we all have the shadow and the light within us, right? And part of what this whole new moon, as I see it, is drawing our attention to is the balancing of those things. So, but Eris and Lilith are kind of like, they both are this energy of like the female, the feminine scorned, like they're kind of fed up. And so, and I've spoken about both of these in past videos. But as I see this is, we've got Lilith conjuncting Neptune. We have Eris in Aries opposing Mercury in Libra. And, this is like, you can see this going on in our world. Women taking positions of leadership, women standing up and demanding that their voices be heard. Specifically Lilith conjunct Neptune is like piercing through the illusion that we've all been, subjected to, all been buying for so long, and standing up for the love of all, ultimately, Neptune, right? For kind of hope for a better future, and using our voices in that regard. So there's that going on. We also have this new moon in a conversation we call an inconjunct or a quincunx, which is a 150 degree angle. But what's important here is, so Uranus is in Taurus at 5 degrees, right? New moon is happening at 5 degrees of Libra. And so an inconjunct or a quincunx is like an itch we can't scratch. It's like something that is kind of like the fly in the ointment, and adjustments, even sometimes like micro adjustments, need to be made, right? To kind of have these energies able to coexist. They don't have much in common, but if we make some small adjustments, then we can at least have them working together and not scratching each other's eyes out, sort of thing. So this really reminds me of what's currently going on, excuse me, in terms of, ooh, pardon me, in terms of the climate strikes, right? The climate crisis, youth, obviously Greta Thunberg being a major example, Autumn Peltier here in Canada, and other youth across the world that are fed up and tired of being lied to, tired of being somebody, waiting for adults to take things seriously and to step up and that kind of thing. And so they are taking the reins. And So, we may have to sacrifice something that we like. This is on a personal scale. We may have to look at sacrificing something that we really, love, are attached to, are attracted to, kind of thing. Um, that's the new moon in Libra, in close conversation with Venus. Venus is the ruler of Libra, right? In Libra at the time of the new moon, bringing added emphasis to these Libra qualities and themes. And then Uranus is in Taurus, a fixed earth energy. Uranus, the change bringer, the liberator, the one who comes in and shakes things up and maybe has some unique solutions to longstanding problems, right? Which I mentioned earlier in the video. So we may have to each kind of sacrifice something or make adjustments in the ways that we relate, in relation to things that we love, in our material resources and possessions, like all of these Venusian and Libra kind of qualities. And we may have to do that for the sake of our planet Earth, right? And like we're seeing all these rebellions, uprisings, shaking up of the status quo, very Uranian energy, for the love of the planet, right? That's the Venus piece, Venus in Libra, for the love of the planet. And also, Venus is a feminine sign associated with women and female energy, feminine energy. And we're seeing lots of, as I mentioned, women leading the charge, right? So all of that's going on. And then the last thing I'm going to say is, before I show you the chart and I get into how this is going to impact each sign, we have some support from Venus in Libra in a sextile to Jupiter in Sagittarius, right? So a sextile is a conversation of opportunity. It's a supportive conversation. And this is this is positive. This is an element of luck in these proceedings, expansion, growth, optimism, right? And so, as I said, you can see how this is it's really a mixed bag, right? Some challenges, some opportunities, and it's our job to try to balance these, to bring these together, and try to work with it. It's complicated, but that's what we're kind of tasked with. And I know you're going to probably hear, if you listen, if I'm one of many astrologers that you listen to on YouTube, or that you read their stuff, you're going to hear a lot of people talking about this is the moon of relationships, and if that's really what you're interested in, then yeah, it is a time for that too. Definitely, new beginnings in relationships of all kinds. But it goes beyond that, right? It's not as simple as that, as I see it anyway. So let me show you the chart. Here's the chart for the new moon. That's, again, it's happening on Saturday, the 28th of September. Okay, so let's see. Over here, you see all this pileup of energy. This is all in Libra. So we've got the moon in Libra at 5 degrees, the sun in Libra at 5 degrees, Venus in Libra at 17, Mercury in Libra at 23, right? And there's Mars still in Virgo, but soon going to shift into Libra as well. There's Jupiter in Sagittarius, and in a sextile to Venus here, right? And they're both at 17 degrees. So this is a strong aspect because they're at the same degree. But you see all these red lines here, right? This square that's going on, right? And we spoke about that. We've got, Pluto and square to this energy. We've got Saturn sitting on the south node. We've got Lilith sitting right on Neptune. There's Chiron in Aries opposing this new moon. There's Eris in Aries opposing Mercury, exactly. And there's Uranus in Taurus, right? So at 5 degrees, and making that, as I said, that inconjunct aspect to the new moon. So I think that's all I'm going to show you. Of course, the North Node is in Cancer there, calling us home ultimately, right? Drawing our attention to home, literally home, our planet. And, home as we sense it and feel it and experience it on a personal level, to nurturing, to caring, to mothering, to security, all of those things. So I'm just taking a second to see if there's anything else that I want to mention to you before. There's one other quick thing before I get into each sign. This is something that I haven't spoke about because truthfully, it's not something I am well versed in at all. It's actually something that's a fairly recent discussion in astrological circles. My teacher, he is doing some work on this right now, and other astrologers are, and you'll hear other people. I know Timothy Halloran, who is a really passionate kind of, I love his stuff on YouTube. He's an astrologer. Rasa Lila Healing is the website, I believe. But he has spoken about this as well. And that is the fact that not only does the moon have nodes, right? You hear us talking about the North Node and the South Node. Those are the nodes of the moon, which is where the moon crosses the eclipse, which is known as the ecliptic, right? So it's not a planet, it's not an asteroid, it's a point in the sky, an important point in the sky. Well, just as the moon has nodes, the planets have nodes as well. And we are starting to learn more about the significance of this, right? And so the interesting thing is, not only are Pluto and Saturn in Capricorn, moving towards this conjunction in early 2020, and the South Node is there, Pluto and Saturn are sitting conjunct, right? Their own nodes. So this is really kind of interesting. So I wanted to mention that to you. If it's something that you're curious about, you can go to people who are a lot more knowledgeable about it than I am, and I'm just kind of learning about this myself. But I thought it was something interesting worth mentioning here. Okay, so let's move on to the part I know some folks wait for. And that is, let's speak to each sign here and talk about the new moon and what house it's sitting in for each of you, and some key words to keep in mind when I'm touching on each sign in relation to this new moon and the energies that it is stirring up for us. So new beginnings, starting over, establishing balance, harmony, mediation, justice. Relationships, socializing, communication, diplomacy, level-headed thinking and dialogue, right? With the intention of bringing things back into balance, getting off the fence, and not staying sort of stagnant, because at some point we need to, unless we're going to stay the same and everything's going to just remain status quo, sometimes we need to kind of get off the fence for a while, right? If you know what I mean. So and just further to that, like keeping in mind that if things are out of balance, whether that be in our own personal lives, in our organizations, um, in our governments, in our schools, in our, whatever, in our communities, in our countries, in our world, if things are out of balance, then we need to ultimately shake them up, right? To disrupt the status quo in order to bring them back into balance. So that's something to keep in mind. And we have the opportunity to do that at the time of this new moon. So here we go through each sign, keeping in mind rising sign. If you listen to your rising sign or ascendant, which those two things are equated, right? They mean the same thing. That in relation to this general forecast tends to be the most kind of obvious or accurate, most specific. However, and to know your rising sign, you need to have a pretty good idea of your birth time. But if you don't know your rising sign, then just listen to your sun sign and your moon sign if you know it. Or if you know all of those, listen to all three of them for added layers of information, right? So we're going to start with Libra because Libra, this is your new moon, right? And so this is your big fresh start for the year. Everybody gets a new moon once a year in their sign, and this is yours, Libra. And so this is happening in your first house, right? And so this is about ultimately establishing balance, harmony, all those things I talked about, justice, in relation to the relationship you have with yourself, your way of approaching the world, how you present yourself and are perceived, your instinctual approach to, the world, to what life kind of presents you with. Your physical health and vitality, of your physical being, physical appearance even. There may be a fresh start, a new opportunity there. But in general, this can be a really big fresh start for you, right? A real big opportunity to reset the balance, regain balance, reestablish balance. Ultimately, in your self, because that's the first house. So please make sure you listen to the intro, right? And that's where I go into sort of all the details. So that's for you, Libra. I hope this is a really beautiful new moon for you. And we're going to move on to Virgo now, where we've got the new moon happening in your second house. So Virgo, for you, this is about opportunity for regaining balance. In terms of your personal resources, money, material possessions, time, energy, your values, your valuables, your material resources, your self-worth. So, this can be, where are things off kilter here? And what steps can you take? What opportunities can you take? Can you harness? What things can you do to reestablish that sense of balance in terms of those second house themes for you? So that's the focus, and it may involve some relationship adjustments as well in relation to those second house qualities and life themes, Virgo. So that's for you. And I'm going to move on to Leo now, where we've got the new moon happening in your third house. So Leo, This is about fresh starts, new beginnings, new opportunities in relation to communication, how you communicate, your style of communication, who you communicate with. Um, you know, this can involve things like the daily communications and messages that are exchanged back and forth, such as, conversation, also, email, text messages, Facebook forums, these kinds of things, whatever, however we communicate, speaking, talking, or speaking, writing, this kind of thing. It has to do with our thought processes, right? And our intellect. It has to do with our immediate environment, the third house. So our siblings, our cousins, our neighbors, our peers, the people we exchange messages with, right? That we communicate with on a regular basis. Um, so it can also have to do with sort of like the short jaunts and short commutes that we take as well. And so there is some opportunity here for newness, right? A new way of doing things, um, establishing more harmony and balance in general in that third house. So that's for you, Leo. We're moving on to Cancer now, where we've got the new moon happening in your fourth house of your home. And I mean that literally and figuratively. So your actual home, place of living, real estate, but also home in the sense of family, roots, ancestry, what and who feels like home to you, what makes you and who makes you feel safe and secure. It has to do with our ancestral, karma and what's been passed down to us through our lineage, that kind of thing. Has to do with often has to do with the mother type figures in our lives as well. So Cancer, you have the opportunity to do things in a new way here, to start fresh here, to take some new opportunities in this fourth house, right? And that can involve relationships in some way, relationships with family members, maybe, or who you consider your family, um, can factor in here. And so I think I'll leave it at that. Cancer, for you, please listen to the intro, right, for the details. And we'll move on to Gemini now, where we've got the new moon happening in your fifth house. Gemini, the fifth house is all about ultimately what sparks joy for us, right? If we had to sort of put it in a sentence, that would be it. And this includes our creative self-expression, our individual creative self-expression. It has to do with our children and children that we are associated with or work with. It has to do with, the fun things in life, what we do for pleasure. And so you have a fresh start here on offer, Gemini, to do things differently, to take some new opportunities, to try something new, to reestablish relationships, maybe with children or, in some way that help you express yourself creatively, that kind of thing. And so this is on offer for you with this new moon in Libra. So that's for you, Gemini. And I'm going to move on to Taurus now, which, Taurus, you have this new moon happening in your sixth house. So this is the house of, the daily grind. It's the house of what we do on the day-to-day, those tasks that we do on the day-to-day, whether they be paid or unpaid. They can be in relation to our daily job and work routine or what we do at home. But those kind of routines, right? And that includes routines around health and wellness. And how we are in service to others. And so for you, Taurus, a fresh start is on offer here. Maybe, the opportunity to try some new health routine, or to look at things in a different way, or to reestablish your health in some way, or to balance your daily schedule in a way that feels more liberating and more in a way that you appreciate and love more. So that is for you, Taurus. We will move on to Aries now, where we have the new moon happening in your 7th house of one-to-one relationships. So Aries, for you, this is very, literally about a fresh start, new beginnings, new opportunity in regards to your relationships. Usually those relationships that are of a more one-to-one, nature kind of thing. So, and that can be close, personal friends. It can be a life partner. It can be a business partner. It can be clients. If you work one-on-one with people, this kind of thing. So there's an opportunity here to establish or to have a fresh start in that arena of one-to-one relationships. Please listen to the intro though as well, Aries, because there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle of the new moon. So moving on to Pisces, where we have the new moon happening in your 8th house. Pisces, for you, this is, there could be some kind of a fresh start on offer, a new beginning on offer in relation to the resources that you share with others. Time, money, energy, right? To your own psychological wellness and healing, to transformation and the process of transformation in some way. And so, this new moon is here to encourage you to reestablish balance in this area of life and to make a fresh start here in some way. Moving on to Aquarius, where we have the new moon in your 9th house. And Aquarius, the 9th house, this may bring about some new opportunity, new beginning that has to do with travel, usually long distance travel, teaching, learning, your bigger picture worldview and the way you see things, your beliefs, right? Your philosophies. And so, there's an opportunity here for you to try something new, do something new, establish a new way of being. And it may involve establishing like new relationships with maybe, a teacher, for example. That would just be one example. So that's for you, Aquarius. And next we have Capricorn, where we have the new moon happening in your 10th house. The 10th house is a very public house. It has to do with your public reputation, your status, your worldly ambitions and achievements, your career, your the legacy you wish to leave, right? Your true calling. And so Capricorn, there's a fresh start on offer for you here with this new moon in Libra. You may establish some new relationships that hearken in this new beginning for you in some way in that arena. But there is something going on here that's a little more public in relation to all these Libra energies that I spoke of at the beginning in the introduction. So make sure you listen to that. So that's for you. And we're going to move on to Sagittarius, where we've got the new moon happening in your 11th house of groups, friendships, networks, your hopes and dreams for the future, the people that are walking the same path as you. So Sagittarius, you have an opportunity here to do things differently and to establish maybe new friendships, establish new hopes and dreams for the future, connect with different groups and organizations that can shift your future in some way. And so, that's an exciting fresh start potentially for you, Sagittarius. So have a listen to the beginning and the details there to give you more info. And then last but not least, we have Scorpio, where we've got the new moon happening in a very private part of the chart for you in the 12th house. So around the time of this new moon, you may not feel like, getting out and about and being really chatty and social and and public. You may feel like what's going on and the rebalancing that's happening for you, Scorpio, is happening more behind closed doors on an internal level in relation to how you spend time and rest, recovery, in connection with, your higher power, whatever that may be. This can have to do with, getting a handle on maybe some self-sabotaging behaviors. And that's something that maybe the outside world's not necessarily going to see, but you are reestablishing balance in some way internally, right? And so that's what's going on for you generally, Scorpio. And maybe establishing a new relationship to a higher power even is a potential. So I'm going to leave that there. Do listen to the intro. And I hope this was enough information to go on for all of you. There's so much I could have said here, but hopefully this is helpful. And I'd love to know, leave me a comment. That would be awesome. And take good care. Have a beautiful new moon. And I will see you next week. All right. Bye-bye.